Hey there! Welcome to the next episode of Personal Branding for Professionals. As a part of the series, we spotlight powerful personal brands across the globe to inspire your personal branding journey. I'm your host, Ketaki Vaidya, and today is all about creating a life that you can love. Creating a life that you can love takes intentionality. It is about living a life with no regrets. It is about owning every single decision that you make and choosing happiness every day. And that is something our speaker is going to help us to do. Joining us today is Jeff Baietto. He is the CEO and co-founder of Enjoy Global. He's also the host of the Enjoy Success podcast and co-creator of the revolutionary self-care app Enjoy Daily, the self-care game. What started as a childhood passion to discover successful ways to live materialized almost a decade ago when Jeff co-founded Enjoy Global, a company aligned with his personal mission to help as many people as he could to live the life of their dreams. So let's begin. Hey Jeff, it's a pleasure to host you. Today's conversation is one that I've been waiting for a long time, and we're going to talk a lot and we're going to enjoy it.
It's super great to be here, Ketaki. Thank you so much for having me.
So first of all, Jeff, tell me about your journey. How did it all begin? I know that you were passionate as a child to find meaningful ways to live life, and that eventually led to the journey that you took. So how did it all begin? And tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thank you. So when I always tell the story that when I was in about 8th grade, so about 12 years old, I had what they clinically diagnosed as a bad attitude. So I was just butting heads with my parents, mainly with my dad. And to his credit, instead of writing it off to like those, preteen years in the United States, that's a troubled time for kids sometimes. Instead of writing it off to that, he gave me, back then it was a tape, and it was this tape from Earl Nightingale. It was called The Strangest Secret in the World. And it was, he gave it to me. He said, listen to it. I reluctantly listened to it. And then I listened to it over and over and over again. And this tape talked about goals. It talked about mindset. It talked about the power that we have to create when we use our mind to think in a certain way. Well, I had never heard anybody talk like that. I'm from a very small town, like 9,000 people, in the middle of the United States, and kind of surrounded by farms. So this was a very new thinking, and I became hooked. So I started getting tapes and books, and over the next throughout high school, I became, that's all I listened to, and that's all I read, and I became the most positive person in my hometown. By a lot. So I was I saw the benefit. It made me feel fantastic. And that really was one of those pivotal moments for me. Yeah. So anyway, that started me on the journey, and it's been a long, windy road. I always dreamed of being able to somehow be in an industry that helped people be the best version of themselves and create the life that they wanted. I always thought someone had given me an exercise at one point. I have, so I did college, and then I traveled for a while, and then I was in my first business, and, so things along the way, but none of them were right. Like nothing was right. And then I met someone who it was just a random meeting, and she had just graduated from a program that was a master's degree in spiritual psychology. Yeah. I had never heard of that, and it sounded fantastic. So she told me a little bit about it. And so I applied, and that really was the next big thing, like to be able to study and use myself as a guinea pig and see why my life was working in some areas and not working in other areas, and really get into the beliefs and really kind of be surrounded by a whole community of people who were on that same journey. So that was the next step. And then I started coaching, and then I started feeling like I was really closer to being on the track of my personal purpose. And it still took a long time, but now for the last 10 years, I've been really locked in, and it's been really focused on, we have a software company, and then which creates 30-day challenges for people to build muscles around the things that matter most. So around their health, around their mindset, around their creativity, around their ability to be kind and to love themselves and to take care of themselves. And we use that with content creators. So authors, speakers, coaches use their content and put it into 30-day challenges on our platform. And now their people are getting a way to practice, so anyway, it's a dream come true. And part of that has been my the podcast and a lot of different things, so that the whole ecosystem is designed to, to support people creating a life that they really love.
Right. So when I look back at your journey, I think there are three main aspects. The first one is when you had the first-hand experience of a podcast back then, right? Because it was sort of a podcast that you were listening to a tape, and that was a pivotal moment in your life. After that, the master's in spiritual psychology, that must have helped you gain some insights and further find your niche in this industry. And then you having to start this company that is leading this transformation and helping people find the meaning in their lives, right? So tell me one thing, that did this master's in spiritual psychology, did this help you along the way? How did it transform you?
The biggest difference for me in that program was, for years, I put on a facade. We talk about the imposter syndrome, a lot in this. And I wanted to be positive. I was trying to be positive, but behind that, I was still very anxious. I was still very, if I was quiet for a little bit of time, the feelings that I would have would be anxious. I was worried all the time. I was worried that I wasn't doing enough. I was worried that I wasn't going to be successful in some way. I was worried. That was what I woke up with. And then I would be busy during the day, so it would cover it up. But if I was quiet, it was always there. And I didn't realize that. It was so normal for me that I didn't realize that was what was always happening. So, because the question that I was struggling with is, I thought I should be happy. I thought I should be. My life was great. Things seemed to work out for me. I was doing things I loved doing, but I still didn't feel great most of the time. And so I was wondering what was wrong with me. And it wasn't until I really understood that there's this background noise, and until I actually really explored that and came to some sort of peace or had some tools to help me relieve that, I wasn't going to experience happiness in any sort of consistent way, or joy in any sort of consistent way. So it opened the door. It's been a long journey, again, of practice and building the muscle, and a daily, it's a daily exercise and practice, but to not even be aware of it before that, and then to really get clear, like, okay, this is what's happening for me, and why my happiness is over here, and this is in the way. And so if I could so that became the biggest takeaway for me with that program.
That is very interesting. And I think you've had enormous self-awareness right from an early age. And I think that is very commendable, because a lot of us, what we do is, in the mid of our career, we think that, okay, the direction that I'm taking is completely wrong. This is where we start finding ourselves, or this is where we actually start working on ourselves. But you did that long ago, when you were just in your 8th grade. That was your first step towards working on yourself, on your personal growth. And that's why you were able to find what made you happy, or at least reach there, because that must have been a struggle on its own. But you did reach the point where you could have a sense of contentment, and you were satisfied with where you were at in your life, right?
Yeah, back then, before the internet and before all access, like, I lived in a small little world. And so I didn't know back then, I didn't know what was possible. Today, young people have a different problem, because they can see so much that it's often hard to choose, and we're influenced. So there's a different set of problems. But back then, for me, coming from where I came from, I didn't know what was possible. I didn't know all the choices I could make. And so, yeah, that was the beginning of that. But I feel that there's a whole new set of problems for young people today.
And that's the irony there. Back then, there were no options at all, and people had to find a way to expose themselves to the world. And now there are so many options to expose yourself that you cannot find yourself, right?
It's always the same journey of trying to find ourselves. It's just a different set of challenges in terms of how to do it. Yeah.
That's true. So how did you realize the importance of personal branding along the way? You were unintentionally doing it right from your childhood, but how did you finally realize that you had to brand yourself in a certain way?
It's been a long time, because I think I'll speak. I wanted to be liked. Like, one of my core desires was to be liked. And so I was always looking for external validation, which is hard when you're, personal branding, if you're really trying to be authentic to who you are. But for me, I was reacting to whether or not I thought people were liking me. Then that was a harder journey. So for me, personal branding and coming to the awareness or the clarity of what you want to stand for, the values you want to be known for, being authentic and trying to live into those, for me, that was very hard because I wanted to be liked more than that. And so it wasn't until I got very comfortable or clear much later, that it's like, okay, who I am is okay. And not everyone, it's okay. It's also okay if not everybody likes me.
Yeah.
But I still find, as we now have social media and we put ourselves out there more and more, people can be mean. And I watch a lot of the people that I love and find very, very inspiring. I read some of the comments and some people are very mean. And that was always a big fear for me as well. When you start putting yourself out there, now the whole world they can decide that they disagree, or they can be, they can say whatever they want, but they definitely don't have to like you. And I think we need to be okay with that. And that's been a tough one for me. So, yeah.
That's true. And I think we all have this desire of being liked. Even though we do not admit it at times, we do have this desire that, okay, I want to be popular. I want this approval. That's sort of the validation that we seek in everything that we do. And it's important to realize, and it will be beneficial if you realize it early in your life, that you're not everyone's cup of tea. And there are people who are going to be obnoxious. They are going to come after you no matter how much you try. And you don't have to let that govern your journey.
It's so true. And that's why I get so inspired by people like you. Like, you're saying yes, you're just doing it. And that is, at the end of the day, that's what's most important is, did we live into what we wanted to live into? Exactly. Not did we cower because someone didn't like it, or someone said we were silly or dumb, or, whatever. And so I just always get inspired when people just like, I'm doing this, because we always hear, oh, that's not going to work, or it's too hard, or you can't do that, and we have to, at some place, we have to decide, what, I'm still going to try. I'm still going to go for it.
And as you said, it's very important that we realize our true potential while we are here. No matter how many people try to discourage you, or no matter how many people say that you're not going in the right direction, or sometimes when you take an unconventional path like you did by taking a master's in spiritual psychology, I'm sure people must have told you that this is not going to pay you in your career, this is not going to be a good decision. That does happen. But to take that unconventional path and to start from scratch and to lead a path that no one else has followed, that's difficult. That really gets challenging at times. And that's why I have this question for you, that when we start our personal branding journey, initially it's the one person team, right? We don't have anyone on our side. We are trying to prove ourselves. We are trying to build our path, and it becomes very challenging, and it becomes very depressing at times when you initially do not see those small wins that you expect, and you have some goals and you might not reach them right at the beginning. So how do you find happiness along the way?
It's a great question, and it is the question. Happiness. Yeah, happiness is in some place, and I think that that's really important. It's not over there. If we don't have it here, we're not going to have it there. And yet, certainly in the West, and again, I think this is relatively universal, but certainly in the United States, the messaging for us is we'll be happy when this happens, right? So when we graduate, when we get the promotion, when we get married, like, it's always over there. And that is, when you're conditioned that, like, what they found in psychology is that's backwards. What we actually want to do is we want to be happy now. And then the things that we want will come more easily. So how we do that is exercise. Like, it's a workout. Being happy is a muscle, and and one of those ways is, when we talk about happiness, it's not just this fleeting, like, I feel good. It's more of what we're talking about is a sense of fulfillment, of being on purpose, of enjoying things, of celebrating our journey. And what that looks like are some simple but very powerful exercises that we can all do. And you spoke of one of them already. It's like, when we're expecting small wins. Well, what's interesting is most people don't, like, we totally take for granted our small wins. Like, most of us only look towards these big goals. I want to write a book, or I want to achieve this, or I want to lose this weight. Well, it's this big goal, which is fine. But if we don't break it up into tiny, 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 tiny little steps that we do every day, most of us take for granted. A lot of the things that we're doing that are actually directional in terms of our growth or hitting our goals, if we would stop and celebrate those. The brain doesn't actually distinguish between a big win and a small win that much. So we get all the same benefits when we start to give ourselves credit for the things we're doing. And it floods our system with endorphins and dopamine and all the different chemicals that make us feel good, that when we take time to reflect and say, like, okay, today I was true to my values. Today I did a few things that made me grow, or a few things towards this goal I'm working on. Just one or two things, but we start to pay attention to those. Each day becomes a victory, and we start to enjoy that day. First of all, it starts with a moment, then an hour, and a couple good hours are a good day, and a couple good days are a good week. And that's how we build a happy life, is moment by moment. It's not big thing by big thing. It's just small win by small win by small win. And I think that's what's so exciting for me, is that's possible. We can all do that.
That's a science in itself, which we don't realize.
Yeah, that's true.
And you make a great point there. I think a lot of times we do set these prerequisites for happiness, that when I reach this milestone, I'll be happy. When I reach there, I'll be happy. But we forget to enjoy the journey. We forget to be grateful for all the small wins along the way. And that has to be practiced. It must ensue. Happiness is a choice. You cannot have a prerequisite for it, but you should definitely practice being happy. And that takes time, that takes patience, it takes a lot of work on yourself, but you have to train your mind that way. And not many of us realize that we are just sad about the negative things in our life, and we don't want to be grateful.
It's the single most important thing we need to remember, is like, none of us expect to be in great physical shape if we don't exercise, or we don't eat healthy. None of us, like, we all understand that we must do certain things consistently over time to make sure that we're in good physical condition. But the same is true for our mind. Like, we must practice certain things so that we think in a certain way that supports us and that helps us move in the direction we want. And so I think that's becoming more and more of a conversation. But the cool thing is that we really can do it. And you spoke the superfood for personal growth is gratitude. Exactly. Like, that is, and we hear about it a lot, but I always like to tell people, like, one way to do it that I found very powerful. And I think this is, if we just say, everyone says, well, keep a gratitude journal or practice gratitude. Here's how. In the morning, say, I'm going to find 3 things that happened today that I'm grateful for. And it starts to make us present to small things, again, that we normally take for granted. For my, this delicious cup of tea, the wonderful conversation. You start like, oh my goodness, like, it's only this hour in the daytime. I've already had 3 wonderful things happen. And now we start to have a vibration. We start to have an energy of gratitude, which is like, good things have happened already. And when we're in that space, more good things come in. We start looking and we start seeing more stuff, and our life changes, even though on the outside, it looks basically the same, but our experience of our own life can change just with that one exercise done consistently over time.
And it's about the change of perspective, right? And
yes,
your advice, it reminds me of a post that I read on LinkedIn a few days ago. And that said, there was a question which said, how do you write content consistently on LinkedIn? And the answer to that was that you have to start observing around in your surroundings. You have to observe your surroundings and find the things that you can write about. And it's not until you look at your day through that lens that you can really write. Otherwise, you will always run out of topics to write. But when you look at your entire day and you look at your workplace with that lens, you definitely find thousands of topics to write about. So I think happiness is very similar. When you find 3 things, or when you set your mind to observe things around you that you can be grateful for, it sets you in the zone to receive happiness.
That's really brilliant. You said, you're so good with words. Like, you have a brilliant way of capturing an idea and putting it into words. I just love listening to you.
Thank you. So the next question is, a lot of times what happens is, when we are continuing with our journey, we reach a dead end, right? We reach a point where we don't find any direction. We feel that we are completely lost, and then we are ready to blame ourselves for all the decisions that we've taken that lead us to that point. And then it is very difficult to find a ray of hope. So how can people find that when they are landing at that point?
Yeah. For me, in in 2008 and 2009, the real estate market crashed very hard. There was a big economic crash, and
Yeah.
I had been invested in real estate, and I lost everything.
Mm.
So everything financially. So I literally I thought I was on this trajectory. I considered myself successful in that way, and then all of a sudden, in a very short period of time, I lost everything.
Mm.
And I remember I was always an entrepreneur, but I wasn't exactly like, I wasn't sure, like, and that rocked my world. Right. And we get to those places and we all have different things, but one consistent thing is there's going to be challenges that we weren't expecting. Right. This year's been a perfect example. No one could have possibly guessed that we were going to be facing a global pandemic. We all have those things. And so, I think especially like in the pandemic, one thing that's been present for me is one opportunity is to get it helps clarify what really is important, and what's not important. When we go back to what is important. So for me, what I realized is nobody really cared if I had money or not. In terms of the people that I cared about, nobody cared. Only me. Like, only did I have that idea that that's why people liked me, or that's what made me successful.
Yeah.
But my family still loved me. My friends certainly didn't care. And so I started to get very clear on the core things that actually were very valuable in life that couldn't go away. The relationships, and this is what I think all of us can do, is what's really important to us. Our relationships, our health, the things that we enjoy doing, and our gifts that we enjoy sharing and with the world, if that's painting or playing a musical instrument, or writing, or doing videos or podcasts or whatever it is, but having a creative outlet, those are the things that when we're at a place where we don't know what to do and we're looking for a ray of hope, it's inside. Like we check in, what is it that actually is most important in my heart? The people I love, they're still there. Or my health, do I still, like, we can still go for a walk or a run, or like I could still run even though things had gone horrible. And when I'd run, I was doing something for myself. I started to feel like, oh, this is still important to me and I can still do it. And I think that those kind of things of just realizing what's really important to us, we can't lose those things. The love in our life, our gifts. If, at the time, what I realized was when I had nothing left to lose anymore, like I was trying to protect things so I didn't lose it. But when I had nothing left to lose, I could make new decisions. I could try things with bigger risks. I had nothing left to lose. And I did stand-up, like I took a stand-up comedy class, and then another one and another one. That was the biggest fear I could possibly think of. And a friend of mine, thankfully, she got me into it. And it was a great thing to overcome a huge fear. I started writing. I took a backpacking trip I had been putting off for years, on a shoestring, and it was, some of the memories I have from that time are the most amazing ones in my life. And the support I had in my case from my parents, just saying, we're here for you. We love you. You're going to land on your feet. I mean, it meant the world to me. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think we all are very afraid to take risks. We are not open to experimenting. And that's where we lose the track of finding ourselves, because the society asks us to be a certain way. There's a certain age at which you have to do certain things. And then you get locked up in that. Then you're just hiked on to the next small milestone in your life, but you don't have a bigger picture of where you want to be. And that deters us from truly living the way we want to live our life. And I think that leads to a point where we are not very happy with our life, right? That does
So
happen.
true. Yep. And I have a 5-year-old now, and one of the things as a parent that I hope that I really am trying to be aware of is, we all had big ideas as kids. Like as children, we had this everything's possible point of view.
Right.
But at some point our bubble gets popped. I want to be this, and then it doesn't work out. And then I want to be this. And we start most of us start to then feel like, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to achieve my dreams. And so I'll be smaller. And what's really important to what you're saying is, if we don't keep growing, if we don't keep taking risks, we end up living a smaller life. And so we have to be very vigilant that, okay, well, that one didn't work out, but I'm going to still go for because that's where life really lives, is in the going for something, whether, and not knowing if it's going to work out, right? We actually really love the challenge. Humans really love the challenge and the unknown. Like, are we going to be able to get there? And am I going to be resourceful enough? And is this going to work? But the journey itself, the challenge, and when we look at kids, like, again, I have a 5-year-old, but watching when he was younger, learning how to walk, it's just, they don't care that they fall down a million, like, they don't care at all. That's part of it. So this idea of growth is, we do fall down. We do, it doesn't work the first time. And so, now we call it design thinking, and it's how quickly can we iterate and how quickly can we fail? Like, that's very prevalent in tech companies, and it's very prevalent in a lot of startup and entrepreneurship conversations. And that's the same thing. Like, failing is not failing. It's just one try. It's just one try. And so the reminder is, get up again, try it again, try it a new way. And that becomes very exciting, because we have to use our creativity. We have to ask for help. We have to get around people who have done it. So, that's and that keeps us growing, and it keeps life very, very exciting and very interesting.
Yeah, and I would say that there's a very thin line when it comes to taking risks. There's a very thin line between being reckless and between taking calculated risks, right? So it does not mean that just because we are asking everyone to take risks, they would just randomly go and take a blind decision. It means that you've done your research, you've taken a calculated risk, and then that bolsters your confidence to take that particular step.
It's a great clarification, because when I use the word risk, I think, again, for how small I had gotten, it was just getting out of my comfort zone, just a little bit. Like, it wasn't a big, real risk. It was just taking a step in the direction of something that might be uncomfortable. So very much, for big risks, again, in anyone, we can be calculated, and we want to have, maybe some support there. But the idea of taking a step, and I'm always speaking that, like, just one step in the direction that we might want to explore, or that we might want to go, that's a risk to me, instead of just staying like, I'm comfortable here. Like, this is what I know, I'm just going to stay right here.
And that is how the journey of personal branding begins, because when you just start, you don't have all of it figured out for yourself. But then you take the first step, and that leads to some possibilities. Then you take the next one. And before you know, when you look back, you've traversed this long journey that you never would have taken had you not given yourself the confidence to take that first step, right? Because that's very important.
It's so true. And I remember hearing, a little bit of your journey and how you've started this. And it comes down to, again, starting. Like, we're not going to know all the answers. And even when we read the books or we take the class, it's still very different when we actually do it. And so the credit for ourselves, I think we all know that joy when we did try something and it's like, oh, I was so nervous, or I just didn't know, or the first time I did it, like, I can't even believe how bad I was the first time I was on camera, or the first time I did this. But we did it, and the doing it, the getting over that fear is a huge win. It's just a huge win. So taking that first step itself is a huge win. And then it is powerful and fun to watch what happens in 3 months, 6 months, a year, and see how we grow, and see how we develop and continue to refine ourselves, and ultimately, end up very proud of, kind of wherever, what we create.
Absolutely. And there's a different sense of accomplishment over there that you feel for yourself when you take that step. And it is not very easy. It's not a piece of cake. It is overwhelming at times. But if you have the intention to just traverse that journey and find answers along the way, you can still get started.
And I think that's why it's important. Podcasts are great, and books are great, and YouTube has a lot of inspirational videos, but watching people's journeys, it's the same all the time. Like, everybody, no one started and then they were great. Like, they all went through a bunch of challenges and practice, and over a long period of time, they became great. But listening to stories, of people that we admire, or it starts to again say, oh, they weren't always like that. They started somewhere else. And so to me, that's one of the most kind of inspiring and reassuring things. It's like, wherever I want to be, they didn't start there. Like, I want to be just like that person. Well, okay, I could maybe take the steps, and over time I could get better and ultimately, move in that direction. So that's always a great reminder. We live in a world where there's lots of podcasts and books and videos for us to be reminded that everyone's journey who we admire, at some point they were just starting, and a lot of times hearing them share that, it's like, oh, they get it. Like they did the same thing. And so that can really support having the courage to take those first steps and just start and just try.
Right. And I totally agree with you on that point, that today in this digital era, there are so many channels through which we can realize our craft, but the underlying idea still remains the same, that you have to face those struggles and you're not going to be great when you get started, but you have to overcome all those hurdles. And then you eventually reach, then you're on the track of personal growth. And I get where you're coming from. And I think a lot of these conversations I've heard on your podcast, which I follow, tell us about how you started your podcast and what led to creating it.
Well, it's kind of a dream come true. And it was, I love podcasts. I think we hear a lot of how our attention spans are getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. We hear that in most social media, like you have to have a fast video, you have to have a great headline. But when it comes to podcasts, they're like an hour long. Sometimes they're an hour and a half long or 2 hours long. And what is it about this? And for me personally, I would way rather have a conversation with one person. That's how I connect with people. Like that makes me than talking to a bunch of people for just a minute or two. Yeah. So when I listen to a podcast, it feels like I'm at the table, like, or we're just sitting around because two people are having a conversation and I feel like I'm really getting to know them.
Right.
And we get to go deeper. So I've always loved the format. And then it was, we were starting to talk about, like we're growing as an organization. We want to start being more thought leaders in this area of personal growth and professional growth, positive psychology, and how to create positive change. And one of the ways that we could do that was to interview awesome people who are experts in that. And I love I love that role as well. I love asking questions. I love diving into someone's, world. Yeah. And so we decided to give it a try. We knew a lot of very interesting people. And so we had a good group of, amazing first handful of guests. And then it grew from there. We've gotten some really good feedback. So thank you also for listening. It's very
and
sweet.
Now you're at episode 90, the last I saw, right? So you're close to 100 episodes now. And that must have been a great transformation in yourself, because subconsciously when we have these great conversations, and that's the beauty of a podcast or any conversation for that matter, that you subconsciously are on the path to changing your mindset and you look at life differently when you hear people talk about their journey or talk about how they approached life.
It's so true. You start hearing similarities and certain habits that people do. For me, I get to listen to those kind of people all the time because I'm interviewing them. And so that puts me in a more positive state of mind. And I end up being a better version of myself more of the time. And I think that's whether we do it in podcasts or whether we do it in whether we're reading or have other practices. But the goal is for all of us to build the muscle to move ourselves into a more positive state of mind more frequently and stay there longer. That is the gift we can give ourselves, because we will become the best version of ourselves by being in a positive state of mind. We'll have greater access to our resources, more creativity, more energy, and all the things that we want to put towards whatever goals and intentions we have.
Yeah, and I think this is what you're doing is one of the best jobs of 2020, right? It came at the right time. Over all the conversations that you've had with different people, one thing that I realize is people do have these, they reach these high positions. They are the leaders of the industry and they still don't find happiness. So at that point, they realize that success was something totally different for them. It was about family, or it was about the charity, or it was about something else. So that perspective is a very different one, because you think that, okay, they must be so happy, they're living their dreams, but that's not the truth.
It's not the truth so often. And what's beautiful is that if we know that, if we can learn that,
Yeah.
no matter what age we are, in our teens, in our early 20s, our 30s, it doesn't matter, because most of us have bought into the idea that we'll be happy when we have a lot of money. Like that's
Right.
the message we hear in the United States. And so when we hear from people who have a lot of money, or have been, that's not it. What is it is this, and it's things that we can all cultivate and we can all have now.
Mm.
Really deep, authentic relationships. We can give back we can be kind.
Yeah.
We can help people in our community or give back in a certain way that's meaningful to us. We can be creative, like all of the things that they point to that really give them happiness.
Mm.
We can do now. We all at some point need to realize that what real success is, are more intangible.
Right, and what you've described here, that has a beautiful term to it. There's a Japanese concept called Ikigai. I don't know if you've heard about it, but this talks about the reason that you get out of bed every day, or the reason that you live. So that's called Ikigai, and I think it's important that all of us find Ikigai in our lives, because that can be different for everyone, but it really is a very beautiful thing. My last question for you would be: how can someone create a life that they love?
Yeah, that's a big question. That's a big question, but it's also, I think you're pointing to it. It's, how do I say that? Ikigai?
Ikigai. So it's Ikigai.
Ikigai.
Right, Ikigai.
I love that. And, you know, a lot of people think that, the reason that they get out of bed has to be this big reason.
Exactly.
This big thing that they're working on. They're, trying to cure cancer or trying to solve poverty. Like it's a big, but that's not it.
Mm.
Doing anything big in the world is really just a series of a bunch of small things.
Mm.
And so the reason to get out of bed in the morning could be to see what miracle happens today, or what magical connection I make today, or what do I learn today? Like, I'm getting out of bed because I have one more day here, which we don't, I think if 2020 has taught us anything, or has been a great reminder, is we are not guaranteed tomorrow. We hear that all the time. Life is precious. But when we're confronted with a global pandemic and so many people have lost, people close to them, our mortality has become hopefully more present to us.
Right.
And when we are aware of our mortality, then we start realizing that life is a gift. If we see it as a gift, just like, again, my 5-year-old, this is his first Christmas. He is so excited about Christmas morning because there might be a present for him.
Yeah.
If we really consider life a gift each day, then getting out of bed is that's the gift. And then whatever happens during the day is we get to bring ourselves into it. So I think this idea of creating a life we truly love starts small. It starts very small. And it's things that we can really do something today that moves us in the direction of the life we want to create. And that first thing is also, what is the life we really want to create? Is it really a big house and a fancy car? Is it really that? Probably not. If we really thought about it, it's probably like, I want to have a lot of love in my life. I want to feel great about what I do in the world for my career. I want to share the gifts that I have in some, relevant way. I want, to feel healthy. I want to feel energized. So those are kind of things when we have to first get clear on what it is that we want to be creating, and then realize that we can take little steps in the direction of that today. And once we're doing that, then it becomes a game, because we're trying to celebrate, did we do something? Did I do something today to support myself in my health? Yeah. If I did, yay. If I didn't, okay, tomorrow, let's make sure that and you start to have that playful outlook that each day we're getting a chance to move in the direction of actually creating something, our life, by design, like in a way that we want it to be. Yeah. And we have a lot more power than most of us give ourselves credit for to do that. So that's a lifelong journey, and it'll always hopefully be a little surprising and turn out in ways that we didn't expect, that are even better than we could have imagined. But the goal each day is to do little things that we celebrate, so that we're enjoying who we are and who we're being each day. Because if we do that, then we feel good. We start to enjoy life. We start to be grateful for life. And then all the things that we want start coming towards us. Like
Right.
where we become a magnet. We start attracting those things even faster. So we know those people. Like, how did she do that so quickly? And it's because you're in alignment. You're in alignment with what you want, where you're going, and you're grateful for what's happening in the moment, and you start attracting and becoming a very strong force for all of that to come towards you.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful message over there. I've read two books around this. One is The Secret, another one is The Power of Subconscious Mind. And it talks about the same thing, that when you set yourself up to receive these good things, you send out a message to the universe that you are ready to get it into your life. You act as if you already have it. You align your thoughts with that idea, and then all of that starts coming to you.
Yeah, it's, if we think about it, our thoughts carry information. Our heart has a certain energy to it. So the idea is to get our thoughts and our feeling into coherence, so that they're aligned, that we feel good and that we're thinking about something that we want. And when we do those two things together, then that's the game. Because oftentimes I was thinking positive, but I didn't really feel it. Or I feel good, but I wasn't using my intention. So it takes a lot of work, but when we do it, then life does become magical. And then we're regardless of what's happening on the outside, we can still create, and we can bring kindness, we can bring joy, we can bring creativity to wherever we are, regardless of what's happening. And that makes for a very rich world and a very successful life. Yeah.
Absolutely. And this is very similar to tuning to a channel on the television. So you set your frequency.
That's
and
right.
Get to that channel. That's what you have to do in your life as well.
And I love that analogy, because you think about it and you're like, on this channel, they always show shows of this. And it's like, I don't really like, well, then turn to a different, if we turn ourselves to a different channel that shows things that we really enjoy, like that's exactly how it works. Like if we adjust our frequency, then what we're receiving, what we're seeing, even in the same world, like it's all happening. So someone could be tuned in and what they're actually seeing is all negative stuff.
Yeah,
it's there. But if we're tuned into something else, we could see a completely different and have a completely different experience in the same world. And that's our job as individuals, is we have to work on our frequency and choose the channel we're gonna participate in.
That's a beautiful thing, right? To summarize this episode, that you have to choose your channel, you have to choose your frequency, you have to choose your channel.
Well, everyone should choose this channel. You're doing a fantastic job. I'm so excited about what you're up to, and I'm really grateful to be here. So thank you.
Thank you so much for your time today, Jeff. I think one thing that I've learned, the biggest takeaway from this entire conversation, is that no matter which point you are stuck at in your life, or no matter where you are currently, you have the potential to get where you want to be, and you can definitely do it. You have all the love, all the energy within you. So you just have to get to that energy and put it to action.
It's beautifully, I can't say it any better than that. I think you're just so good at putting into words important concepts and phrases. So thank you for that. That's a great gift.
Thank you so much.